taking you so long? Lacing these boots? Next time, could you buy some with zippers? Okay, maybe this'll help you move a little faster. I was just walking down Jock Block. 3 words, okay? Looking good.
So That's So Raven is a super successful Disney Channel sitcom, but it was mainly one of the first, making it the most groundbreaking, because I think it's when they actually decided exactly what they wanted their sitcoms to be. Up until that point, they had like the Even Stevens, a bunch of like 90s shows, but Disney Channel never really perfected what they wanted to have comedy-wise on their channel. I mean, Teen Nick is already making strides over there with all that. The Amanda Show, like, I feel like they pulled in a lot of the teen audience. But here, Disney Channel's like, how do we get them? And that's when That's So Raven comes in. And it was created by Michael Porriez. And I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he created Hannah Montana. That's why there's like so many similarities between That's So Raven and Hannah Montana that I can't even begin to get into. The point is, you have a main character that has a secret double life, and how they manage to keep balance in their life with their friend group. And their friend group are usually filled with overdramatic and stupid characters, which I don't feel good saying that, but it was a lot of stereotypes back then. That's how you like kind of sold a sitcom. You're like, this is this type of character and that type of character. And That's So Raven was the first step into this big success. And it's really cool because all the episodes have the similar structure, with Raven having a vision, her doing something to either prevent that vision, unlock a new rule about that vision, or almost like making a counteraction so that vision doesn't come true. And it was something otherworldly because Nickelodeon had a lot more grounded sitcoms, and Disney could afford to go there. They were like this fantasy company that was known for all these cartoon movies and fairy tales that came to life, so of course they're gonna have a different edge on this. And it's really cool because I learned a lot about how this show kind of came together, and it wasn't originally supposed to be Raven. Apparently it was supposed to be a buddy comedy with 2 people being able to see the future, but before they figured all that out and got into casting, they called it Absolutely Psychic, which is kind of a funny idea. It sounds totally like a Disney Channel sitcom, but then they saw Raven Simone as the lead character, and they're like, wow, like, we definitely need this girl. Let's build it around her and have one main character. Something that was a really good decision that I feel like would not have bled into Hannah Montana if they didn't take that risk. They decided on Raven Simone when they actually brought in a test audience and actually liked her in the pilot better. So I think they filmed more than one pilot, which is kind of crazy to think about. And that's when they really took this show seriously and decided to go to a full first season, bringing on David Brookwell and Sean McNamara, who actually co-produced Even Stevens for Disney Channel. So they're trying to find the Disney format that worked perfectly for this show. And it's so crazy because instead of doing that, it was the opposite, where That's So Raven became the perfect format for a Disney show. And you know what's crazy? They actually announced That's So Raven in November 2001, and it didn't come out until 2003. That's just how long it took to produce shows like this. And it was originally expected to premiere in 2002, but it didn't end up happening. They ended up not airing it until 2003, which they started with the first 4 episodes, which is kind of interesting. So Raven Simone is a really cool character because this is not her first show. She was on The Cosby Show and Hangin' with Mr. Cooper, and she must have learned some really good comedic skills because she is the funniest actress I feel like I've ever seen, and this whole show revolves around her, allowing Disney Channel to kind of get a head start on what worked anyway. And she's the first African-American woman to lead her own show on Disney Channel. Like, that was a big deal at the time. Then, of course, we have Orlando Brown and Annalise Vanderpool as the 2 sidekicks in the show, and it's definitely, like, a really great, solid cast. My favorite being Cory Baxter, the kid that's kind of a genius. Reminds me of, like, a Megan type before Drake and Josh came out. Not Megan as the horror series, Megan from Drake and Josh, Megan Parker. That would be a crazy miscommunication, wouldn't it? And yeah, Cory is just so funny from the very pilot episode. Like, he does a great job at selling this show too. The parents are some of my favorites. Like, they try to balance, like, being authoritative but also not getting in their kids' way, which you always appreciate about a sitcom. Like, you're like, oh, this is how I wish parents really were. They were a lot more controlling than the TV shows made it out to be. So looking back in retrospect, it's so funny to think about that. I like that they managed to make the show not super preachy, but still have like good moral outcomes, especially given the fact that this is a psychic character. Like they're given more power and control than a normal kid would have, and then also higher than the adults in their life. So it's kind of like a kid living the dream. It's funny because being a psychic, it's interesting to see how if people found out what the stakes would be, like would she get in trouble, like would people like look down to her, is she gonna live a normal life? And they kind of copied that onto Hannah Montana, where Hannah Montana actually, like, there was a legitimate reason why she couldn't be found out, because then her life would never be the same. Raven's character is interesting because if people found out, it's not like her life couldn't ever be the same, because she could still kind of keep away from, you know, publicity and all that stuff. So coming out in a different time, it really showed like the things that did and did not work about a sitcom. So let's jump into the episodes. You're gonna be joining me on this first watch because I never really grew up watching That's So Raven. I didn't get Disney Channel in like 2008 when The Sweet Life was on its last season, so I kind of missed most of the episodes with That's So Raven, except for the ones that aired on ABC Family every like Saturday morning or something, and the crossover episodes like That's So Sweet Life, because that would just be on all my friends' TVs too. So we had a little bit of a touch and go relationship with me and That's So Raven, but I never disliked it. I remember the cigarette episode the most out of all this show because it was so shocking to see on a kid's show. And to be like that series finale, like, that's weird to me. It's just weird. But all around, like, it's just, I've never seen a bad episode. I don't think I'm going to expect to, but we're going to be watching this show with fresh eyes. So thank you guys so much to everybody who requested it, because That's So Raven is such a gem, and I'm so glad to be able to dive back into it. So let's start with season 1, shall we? Episode 1, Mother Dearest. This is interesting because I thought this would be an episode about how Raven got her powers, or like something really specific with the psychic ability, but I wasn't surprised to see they just want to throw us into it. This episode is about Raven talking back in class and her parents getting called into a teacher conference, and she's essentially going to get in trouble. The only reason this is a big deal is because the parents just bought her a phone, meaning that they're like, you're ready to be an adult, you're responsible, now that you're a teenager, all these things are going to be important for you. And it's cool that we like learn about like the pressures of being specifically a teen versus a child and not yet an adult, because that is 100% where the heart of all these teen shows really lies. And so yeah, Raven spends this whole episode trying to avoid her parents meeting her teacher. And the being able to see into the future is kind of interweaved naturally into it. Mother Dearest is a really interesting pilot in that sense that it follows all the structural rules to a pilot. Like, it starts at the beginning of the day and ends at the end of the day and kind of shows us what Raven's life is like. But it's interesting because we don't see Chelsea. I really expected to see Chelsea in the pilot, but it's just Orlando Brown and Raven. So it's kind of like focusing on her as the character, and it has a lot of the hijinks that you would expect from the show, like her dressing up as her own mother to try to trick the teacher into like not getting her in trouble, and the parents end up showing up, which is a cool twist, and Raven has to put on this performance for both her teacher and her parents, and it's just all around wacky. Of course she's caught in it, she ends up telling the truth, which is really sweet, but she still gets punished. All around, it's good to have like the accountability for the things that went wrong on her part, but then also showing everything else. They also gave us 3 visions in this episode, which I find really interesting because, of course, it's like the pilot. You want to get us the most familiar with the show as we can be, and that's like the perfect amount, I feel like. Like, throw us into the visions. And the episode left me with a lot to desire about the show. Like, I was super excited to figure out how this would go based on this. And it's interesting because in production order, this is supposed to be the 2nd episode, but we're going to go through the season as if it's in the order of the air dates. It's nice that we start with an episode that is Raven's problem, solely just hers, because that's kind of what I want to know in the pilot, is just who the main character is, and everybody else is kind of backdrop, except for the fact that the parents, they're so well introduced because obviously like it's between Raven and them. And, oh, we introduced Cory, too. He's apparently, like, this genius that knows how to get out of all their parents' rules. So Raven goes to him. Like, great way to introduce everybody. The episodes are different everywhere, so I'm just gonna go by the wiki page. The 2nd episode is called Party Animal. And this one is actually really sweet because it's about Cory and Raven. So Cory wants to have his birthday party, and Raven basically had a vision that Cory said, "I hate you." So it becomes more about Raven's insecurities of being a bad sister. Like at first she's like, "Oh, it's normal that siblings hate each other," but then she sees this vision and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I maybe need to be a good sister." And this is a very sweet episode because like having her come from this place where she's just trying to make her brother like her is very adorable, you know? Cory in this episode is hilarious. Like seeing the siblings dynamic just works so well together, and I can't believe how good of an actor Kyle Massey is. Like, this is so sweet the way he acts. So the parents end up getting sick on the day of his birthday party. And Raven's like, "Oh my god, he's gonna say he hates me because of all this." So she quickly tries to come up with a backup plan. This is when we get Chelsea in the episode, and Orlando Brown. Oh my god, Eddie. I can't believe I keep calling him that. So Eddie and Chelsea finally come in this episode and try to help Raven give Cory the best birthday party. At first, it's just really awkward, and she's like telling them their seasons, which is cool because it also works into the fact that she's like a very fashionista type person. Something I feel like we almost tried to get in other sitcoms, but Raven's the true like fashion icon one. So yeah, we're introduced to some of her hobbies, and she ends up getting this guy named Reptile Rick to come over, and everybody at the party is like, "Yeah, that'll save the day." So she gets this guy to come, and then he ends up eating the pasta that made the parents sick, and now he's sick as well. So now Raven has to do this whole performance with these animals within their house. Keep it from her parents, help Reptile Rick, and also make Cory have a good time. Crazy stuff. Yeah, so by the end of this episode, she does end up pulling it all off, and Cory forgives her for everything that ended up happening, and it's really sweet. It just goes to show that even though you can't stop the future from happening, you can make up for a bad future, I guess, if that's not a dark thing to say. So yeah, Party Animal, really good episode. Episode 3 is Test of Friendship, which is more so an Eddie episode. I think it's more like the first friend-centric episode of this show, and I saw this on a lot of websites as like, "Oh, this is the worst episode ever," and I could see there's a little bit of cynicism in this episode for sure. So Eddie wants to be on the team for basketball, and he's about to make the team, which is actually a big win for him because he's like really worried about doing it, but he can't play for them if he doesn't pass his Spanish test. And of course, Raven and Chelsea are really good at Spanish, so they don't really have a problem with it. And Eddie starts asking Raven to use her visions to help him pass the test. A perfect episode that is focusing on their friends, but also focusing on Raven's psychic abilities too. It's a lot better with Chelsea. I feel like she evens out the group a lot more than before. Like, just having Eddie feels a little empty, but I guess they did that because they wanted to focus on Raven. Like, no harm, no foul on that. And it's so funny because it's like they do that common trope in teen TV where it's like, "Let's help this guy study for a test." And then they have a montage of them all trying to get him to learn this. And Eddie cannot learn Spanish. For some reason, he's completely incapable. I don't know how, but he just is. Raven can see into the future that he is not going to pass, making him be like, "Why won't you just help me out?" And it becomes a moral dilemma where she is being pressured to help Eddie cheat. And Eddie's kind of horrible about it. He's like making her feel bad all throughout the episode. And you do feel bad for Raven. I feel like this episode's more about consent. Like, she said no, it's against her morals multiple times to not use her visions to help him cheat on a test. Or like her and Chelsea can't do that. Like, that's just not appropriate. He just makes him feel worse and worse, and it's really not cool, Eddie. I don't like the way he looks in this episode. In the end, she does help him cheat, but karma on her because they find out that the test isn't actually with the same answers she helped him study. So now he's about to fail this test. So Raven and Chelsea get up on this high wire thing outside the school, and I've never seen this in a Disney Channel so intense. They did this in iCarly. I Quit iCarly, where Sam and Carly were hanging off the side of the building. Super scary, super dangerous, and life-threatening. The fact it's just in this casual episode of teen TV. But it's so funny because it ends up like they're trying to communicate to Eddie that he has all the wrong answers, and he can't tell they're trying to do that until they actually like communicate with him outside the window, and it's really funny the way it goes. And, you know, they kind of get their karma. Eddie ends up passing the test on his own, which is actually really cool, and Raven ends up feeling horrible about what she tried to do in general. And she really didn't have to do this whole time. Like, she was giving him the benefit of the doubt in a way that he did not deserve. But at the end, Eddie does acknowledge that it's his fault, and he shouldn't have pressured her to begin with, and that's where all, like, the negativity got involved in the plot, and that's a good moral. I like the episode moral being that, like, you should not cheat, and if you do, like, you kind of always will find consequences. So good for Raven for not sticking to her gun and then paying for it. Actually, poor Raven, she was the victim of this episode. And then we get the next episode, 4. It's Wake Up Victor. And this episode is more so about the parents, which I really, really liked. In this episode, we learned that Victor is a famous chef, and he does a really good job. Obviously, we know that now in context, because in Cory in the House, he gets a job with the president as being his cook. And this episode is kind of opening up the doors to that, pretty much. So the whole episode is basically Victor getting ready for this performance on live TV. He's super nervous, but it's such a good deal for everybody. Raven has a vision that he's going to screw it up and everything's going to get messed up, but she kind of keeps that from the mom so that way it doesn't stress anybody out anymore, which I would have also done. Like, I don't know why you would try to get away with that. Meanwhile, in the B plot, Cory and his friend are learning hypnotism and trying to get Chelsea and Raven to fall for them by hypnotizing them, which is such a 2000s plot. Like, now that seems a little really inappropriate. They're trying to get like a kiss from them, which is insane, but they're told that the psychic powers do work on some people, and little did they know it worked on Victor. So Victor can't wake up, especially in time for the television performance, and the TV people are horrible. They're very much like, you can't do this. You're gonna be over in the culinary world if you can't make this performance work. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if things were that intense at the time, but I think Victor's gonna be fine if he doesn't make this perfect. But those are the stakes, so everybody's trying to wake up Victor, and then they do the bit where even though he's passed out, they try to get him to still cook something, and they end up trying to make up a bunch of lies to make it normal, but then make the position so much worse. I didn't realize that Cory has such a crush on Chelsea. I think that'll come up a lot more times, but it's funny to be introduced in this episode. It's so funny because the mom tells him that, like, hey, he was hypnotized, and obviously everybody thinks that's a lie, and Victor ends up waking up just in time to put on a really good performance in front of the cameras, and all ends well. Another good episode of That's So Raven. Episode 5 is A Fish Called Raven. In this episode, we have a vision where Raven sees that Eddie makes the winning shot at a game, which is kind of a huge deal for him. Meanwhile, she is trying to join the journalism club and actually write an article, and the main girl in that club is out to get her. She is disrespectful as heck, out to get Raven, and sabotages her from being able to report on this really cool event with like one of their favorite bands, and so she ends up having to go to Eddie's performance instead. But Raven has a solution. She's like, what if I write my article about the basketball game and Eddie doing the winning shot a day early, and then I could still go to the concert, which is kind of a genius idea. I would use my future powers for that. Unfortunately, though, the journalist finds out that Raven did this, found out that she wrote the article in advance, and is like, you're psychic. So basically, she finds out she's psychic, and she's like, if Eddie wins this competition, I'll know you're actually psychic, and I'll print this article outing Raven to the whole school. Wow, scary situation. So now Raven has to counteract her vision by stopping Eddie from getting the winning shot. Oh my gosh, everything is backwards. So yeah, she dresses up in the mascot costume and tries to sabotage Eddie, which is super confusing for everybody all around. When Eddie finds out this is why she's trying to do it, he kind of redeems himself from the Test of Friendship episode and is able to purposely lose to help her keep her secret, which is really sweet. We end up finding out that that means they still win, but Raven was wrong about how they won. Therefore, her secret is kept safe and the journalist loses, which is kind of a cool win. This is a really clever written episode. Like, this is what I expect the entire series to do best, and they did best. Okay, the next episode is Season 1, Episode 6, The Smell of Victory. And this episode is classic, like, old That's So Raven, because they are clearly in the same classroom for all their classes. Like, I don't know why they just switch out the teacher and expect us not to notice. So Raven gets a partner she really doesn't want to work with in science class, and it's this guy who smells. His name's Ben, and she is really not wanting to be his partner, so she keeps trying to get out of it somehow by asking other people to switch with her, even asking her teacher to not be on his team, like, all because he smells, which is definitely a relatable teen issue. She ends up having a vision that by being his partner, she is going to get an A on this project, which actually means a lot to her. She wants to get an A, so she tells the teacher, never mind, actually, I'm going to be his partner. And then starts using a bunch of techniques to keep him not smelling as they work together. Everybody in Raven's house, like, tries to avoid him because he smells that bad, and I feel kind of bad for this kid, because Raven realizes he's actually a really nice person despite the smell, and it's kind of sad that she's, like, treating him this way. And then in the meantime, Eddie is trying to impress this girl, but it doesn't really work out. It happens a lot of times in this episode. Gonna move on from that. They have this teacher that they keep making fun of in this episode that pronounces his P's so prominently that, like, the spit comes out every time and nobody's comfortable with it. I don't know why the recurring jokes are everybody being gross. You know, like, this guy stinks. This other guy, like, pronounces his P's. Like, why is it the butt of the joke every episode? And I feel kind of bad. The 2000s were about not knowing how to tell somebody that they either stunk or, like, did something incorrect. And it's really sweet to see that Raven has a conscience and, like, doesn't want to not tell this guy that he smells. Raven volunteers this kid for the dunk tank so he could fall in water, and she realizes that maybe she should just be honest with him about how he smells, because he's a good person, and it's not really fair to treat somebody that way. So this episode did a good job at introducing a lot more secondary characters, got us used to the idea of, like, multiple visions in an episode, and also just shows Raven's moral dilemmas, which I like. I like that she keeps making the right decision. She's a very, very likable character. Then we have episode 7, Campaign in the Neck, which is a really funny title. This episode is about Chelsea. She's running for student council, and Raven has a vision that she's gonna lose by, like, 1,000,000 points. No, not 1,000,000, but, like, 200 to 3. And then this actually makes Eddie be like, well, I'm not gonna vote for her, and she's gonna be a 2. And it's like, that's not nice. Raven and Eddie are pretty determined on helping her win. Really, honestly, like, it's sweet that, like, they care so much. Raven even gets a pie chart of all the jocks and the nerds in the school and, like, how to win them. After seeing the vision that she would lose so bad, she's like, we cannot let this happen. We need everybody to vote for her. So her and Eddie extend themselves so far to make sure this happens with bribes. So she goes behind Chelsea's back and pretty much asks everybody in class to vote for Chelsea in exchange for, like, a chore. And then she finds herself basically taking care of babies, mowing the lawn, walking dogs, all to get everybody to vote for Chelsea. So now she has to keep this a secret. Chelsea has to win the campaign, and Eddie has to keep up with it, pretty much. There's, like, so much chaos in this episode, but I really like it, because of course she's gonna use her vision to cheat most of these episodes. It feels like, despite the fact that a lot of these are cheating versus not cheating, using your psychic powers for good or for bad, it keeps coming back up, and they find a way to vary it so much, and I like that. Like, we're only 7 episodes in, and they have a lot of unique concepts. But yeah, this taking care of the animals and everything comes to a head when Chelsea actually shows up and walks in on all this stuff going on, and that's when Raven has to kind of be honest that she was not being honest the whole time. That sounded weird, but you know what I mean. In the end, Chelsea gets mad at her, and the two essentially stop becoming friends. Then we have the debate where they're actually voting for the class president, and of course the guy who can't pronounce the P's is the head of the debate, which I can't tell if this joke is gonna keep going on. Just the fact that he spits when he says the word P is, like, hardly a joke. But they keep going with it. Obviously, Chelsea doesn't want to talk to Raven, so they're still in a disagreement until Raven gets Chelsea to say why she wants to be president, and it becomes, like, a really thoughtful speech. Everybody ends up hearing it, and her vision ends up changing, which is super cool. Like, we find out that the visions don't always have to come true, but they rarely do. Like, they are usually pretty correct. So yeah, Campaign in the Neck, a very stereotypical episode of a teen sitcom, but does it in a very unique way. Then we have Saving Psychic Raven, episode 8, a parody of Saving Private Ryan in the title, which whoever titled these episodes is pretty smart. This episode actually introduces lore that I never think was ever explored. Basically, Raven finds out that there's this other girl at school that has a psychic-like ability. So it turns out Raven's not the only one, showing us pretty early on that this world is a lot more fleshed out than we knew. It becomes a huge commentary on friendship. Oh, and the girl that is psychic, she was on Malcolm in the Middle, I'm pretty sure. Like, do you recognize her? I swear she was in something else. Oh, well. So yeah, this girl is like, yeah, we're all psychic. So we use it to be like better people. And they're kind of like outcasts, this group, but they're doing great things. And Raven finds herself fitting in with them really well. Eddie and Chelsea kind of jealous with all the time she's spending with them. So end up being like, hey, they're freaks. And like starts calling them names. And Raven's like, that's not cool. Like, that's not how you treat people. Ends up fully becoming friends with the psychics. Then the psychics start trashing Chelsea and Eddie. And Raven's just like, it doesn't matter, psychic, not psychic, outcast, not outcast. You can't treat people that way, which is an awesome message. I think this episode is so good at giving us lore, giving us morals, and then also showing us a cool vision. Seeing Raven be experimented on because of all this is also interesting, because clearly having psychic abilities is a questionable thing. So like knowing that this is a contention for all the other people in the show, it's cool. It's cool, but it's also like, dang, she really can't keep the secret. I like that Raven is able to bring together this group of people all at the end of the episode. Like, it's definitely about like unity, and the powers go pretty far. They levitate Raven at the end of the episode, which I think we go a little too far into the psychic stuff and lose some of the groundedness by the end of this episode, but it's not something they do too many other times after this, so work with me here. That's so Raven. Then we get another party episode, which is kind of crazy after the Cory one. It's called The Parties, episode 9. And in this one, it's about Raven and how she deals with the popular crowd. So this girl is having a party, a birthday party, and Raven is having hers the same day. But this girl is like really pretentious, trying to get everybody not to go to Raven's and just assuming she's going to step on Raven. And of course, this brings out Raven's like revenge side, using the psychic powers for evil in this episode. So Raven gets super competitive with this other girl, and they're all trying to get people to come to their party instead. We learn inevitably that this girl lied about Raven's party being moved up a week, so people show up to Raven's house a week early expecting the party, and Raven is not prepared for it. She is so embarrassed, and all these people are just at her house because of this one thing this mean girl did, and it's not cool. Like, this is kind of going above and beyond for humiliation, making the audience, like, actually understand why Raven is about to do her revenge. The parents even have, like, a dance to ruin Raven's party even further, which is kind of funny. Look at them dance. So, in order to get revenge, Raven ends up inviting Nikki over in the middle of her party, which I don't know why in the world this girl would have showed up if she was hosting a party anyway. And they pretty much kidnap her, attack her, fill her with feathers, and I've never seen teen shows like get this aggressive with their revenge. Like, it's pretty intense. Midway through them, like, torturing her, using a blow dryer at them. Even Cory gets involved at getting revenge on this girl. In the midst of it, Raven has a vision that, like, she doesn't feel better, essentially. Like, this is not a good way to do things. So she ends up helping Nikki out in the long run and making the good person decision, which it's not hard to do, Raven. Like, we saw how bad you were treated. We definitely want you to have a win, but she's too good for this, which I appreciate. I like that we end on, like, a good moral when it comes to fighting fire with fire. But then the good moral is, like, kind of taken back because then Raven ends up doing something that she knows is harmful to Nikki, and it just ends up happening anyway. So yeah, I guess moral learned, but then unlearned. Okay, so then we have Season 1, Episode 10, Ye Olde Dating Game. And I actually find this one super funny because they have an entire medieval dance set up. I mean, it's Chelsea's idea, and obviously Eddie thinks it's, like, ridiculous. And he's like, the talent that's going to perform there, and he has to figure out something medieval that's also cool. I don't know. That's the funny part. But the real plot line is that Raven has a vision that this guy is like, you're the only one for me, pretty much. And Raven's like, oh, this is exciting. I can't wait for somebody to ask me to the prom. Who's it gonna be? And then Eddie's like, oh, Stinky Ben is gonna do it. And they're like, oh, that's awkward. And it's so hard because this guy is so sweet and understanding, so the fact that everybody treats him horribly is kind of sad. I mean, I definitely think somebody needs to tell him he needs to put on deodorant, but, you know, you can't look at him like he's less of a person. Raven ends up spotting the guy from her vision, and his name's Gabriel. So Raven has a crush on this guy named Gabriel, and he's this big photographer guy. And then he is the one who does inevitably ask her to the dance. But like many of her visions, she is not able to get the full scope of the vision. She just only can get what she sees, which is a really cool concept because she can make the conclusions herself, which is so funny. Of course, a teenager would do something like that, you know? So Raven ends up accepting Stinky Ben's invitation to the dance because she's under the impression that Gabriel is actually going with somebody else, so maybe her vision was wrong. But then when she realizes Eddie was wrong, he isn't going with anybody, so she says yes to 2 guys. What is this episode like? Probably every other prom episode. Literally, Miley had this exact situation happen in Hannah Montana, where she wanted somebody to ask her out, she ended up saying yes to somebody else, but then not wanting to go. It's just all this drama. Being a teenager is so weird when you're like working on approving and disapproving of people in your social circle. It's a weird power you have, but you don't realize you have it until you're like much older, which is why this episode's so funny. Or interesting. I guess I don't think it's funny, you know, like that. Well, it's funny. Oh gosh. So then Raven basically is like, Cory, make me look bad so Stinky Ben does not want to actually go to the dance with me. And of course, he just wants to go with her more, which is even more ridiculous, him doubling down. It's so unappealing, all the outfits they have to wear in this episode. Like, of course you wouldn't want your dance to be medieval themed. Like, it's just, there's something about it that's so off-putting. I mean, seeing Eddie behind the DJ, actually leaning into it kind of makes it kind of cool, but for the most part, this is not a good idea. So Raven ends up trying to look gross for Ben, but girlfriend material for Gabriel, so she's got quite the predicament in this episode. She even gets stuck in one of those medieval gurneys. Is that a gurney? Yeah, I guess it is. She gets stuck in a gurney during prom, which is insane. She ends up walking in on Gabriel talking to his girlfriend, turns out he has a girlfriend, and apparently he loves her so much, and she watches him confess, and I feel really bad for her. Like, this would break my heart if I had a crush on somebody, and they were just like, nope, don't worry, like, I'm just there because it's pitying them. And then Raven kind of gets her karma because she knows how it feels, given the situation she has with Ben. And the moral lesson is treat people the way you want to be treated. Great episode. I feel like the best part of this episode is, like, the moment where she realizes that, like, she's not gonna be with this guy. For some reason, it just hit me really hard, and I just related to it a lot. The next episode is called Dissin' Cousins, episode 11. And in this one, Raven has a cousin coming, and they do not get along at all. Again, reminds me of the Hannah Montana episode where her and her cousin don't get along at all. So they really hate each other. They act nice in front of each other, which is definitely like a really accurate portrayal of people that don't like each other. I feel like I hate it when people are pretty overly like, oh, I hate you. Like, it's like, is that realistic anymore? Not really. And this girl goes all around the world, apparently, so she thinks she's all better than Raven. And there's this kind of like resentment in the relationship that just keeps setting them off. And it actually goes back to Eddie. Raven has a vision that she's going to kiss Eddie. And Eddie is like usually this boy next door that like just wants to be with her, but there's not really a chance. So when this is actually looking possible, Raven has a plan. So she's like, why don't you spend the week with her and we go do actual things we want to do? It's so funny to reminisce on the days where like used to meet people through friends or at each other's houses when you're like, I don't know, it's just really genuine. So once Raven gets this vision that this girl is gonna have a crush on Eddie, she basically asks Eddie to pretend to be her boyfriend, so that way she could actually have one thing to one-up her cousin with, which, I mean, it's a stereotypical episode where it's like you have family visiting and you want to seem better than you were, and Raven's really good at, like, making it seem realistic. Obviously, there's so many jokes about them dating, which would never actually happen. Disney did a good job at, like, keeping platonic friends platonic. So they get all competitive over Eddie, which neither of them actually want to be with, and of course this girl wants to be with him now that Raven has him. So they end up having a dinner party with Raven hosting, and Eddie and this girl keep flirting, and Eddie is supposed to be with Raven, and it is just a hilarious mess. So Raven comes clean to the whole family, and it's kind of embarrassing. It's like, why did you pretend to date Eddie just to get him away from your cousin? And then her and her cousin get in this big argument about the fact that she believes Raven has the perfect life, and Raven believes she has the perfect life. So grass is always greener. They make up. Beautiful ending. Yeah, it's nice seeing one of her visions, like, change her life for the better as opposed to just get her into more trouble. But all around, this is a really funny episode, and the girl playing her cousin is really good at it. Eddie being at the center of everything, he's a good character to be doing that. Season 1, episode 12 is called Teach Your Children Well, and in this episode, basically, Raven has a vision that her mom is going to be their new long-term substitute. And I've never agreed with a main character more with their flaws, but like, yeah, like, her mom acts really embarrassing in the classroom. Raven tries to avoid it at first, but it's very quickly that this vision comes to realization, and the whole rest of the episode is about Raven trying to get her fired. Raven gets more and more embarrassed as this goes on, like, the mom even interprets the characters to the students in the class, but I swear some of the class likes this, so I don't know why Raven's getting in the way of all that. Everything gets worse when she's offered a permanent position, and suddenly Raven's life seems over. And I'm like thinking, we need a vision at this point, Raven, like, switch up the plot. I'm nervous for you. She ends up writing a note, kind of trashing her mom and saying how she's feeling, passes it to Eddie, who passes it to Chelsea, and then next thing you know, it gets lost with the graded papers. And of course, her mom is going to inevitably find this. It's super embarrassing. I would feel horrible if my mom found that. I wonder what my mom would teach if she were a teacher. Probably Italian. But not like the language, but like the food. Yeah. Raven gets into her usual hijinks by sneaking into the class at night to try to get this piece of paper back, which is actually kind of sweet. I like that the whole goal is to not hurt somebody's feelings. Like, that kind of means a lot. They trick the teacher into opening doors for them, which is super unrealistic. I can't believe this guy is dumb enough to open and shut a door for Raven to get in. They end up not being able to get it because it's locked, so Raven gets the entire desk and they take it outside of school, only to be lodged down a hill on the top of this thing. And it's definitely peak physical comedy. I feel like Hannah Montana never even went this far. Like, it's shot on location. It's really funny. Going to all that trouble, it doesn't even end up working. The mom ends up hearing what the note inevitably said, and even worse, from Raven's actual point of view. And of course she feels bad, approaches Raven about this whole thing, and they actually make up, and she decides not to take the job long term. It kind of means more to her to have her relationship with her daughter and let her have her space, which I really like. She is a very good mom. I don't know why all the moms on these sitcoms are just, like, so good, yet the kids act up so horribly. Like, what? Oh, Cory ends up using this as a win for his life, because now that his mom's not home, he could have friends over and do a conga line, as you all know young kids want to do when their parents are away. A conga line. I would just steal candy. Honestly, I just ate a lot of candy. But yeah, Teach Your Kids Well is definitely a really good one. Episode 13 is called Driven to Insanity. The whole beginning is about Raven seeing a vision where her parents just say no to her and there's no context, so she's like curious this whole time about it. Then she learns that there's this really attractive guy that wants to go out with her. He works at the movie store, which, wow, that's the first insight I've heard into remembering Blockbuster even a little bit. This is dating the show a lot. But he's 17, so Raven's like kind of nervous about her parents saying no, and realizes, oh wait, that's the vision, of course. So she asks her parents, they say no, and she's just kind of annoyed at the whole situation, and of course, is gonna defy them. Didn't see that coming in a scene sitcom. Luckily, her parents are going out dancing that night, and that kind of insight helps her get away with still trying to go on the date. She has Chelsea and Eddie wait at the house as she tries to go and fully have this date. It's so funny how the show now started to shift into Raven really wanting a boyfriend. Like, that's not all girls think about, but it is written by a guy, Michael Porriez, so I guess that would make sense. So Raven ends up going on this date, and this guy is actually kind of really disgusting. His car smells, he has no manners, and even on the date, he's like making jokes at her, which by the way are kind of funny jokes. I like this guy. I know I'm 27, but 17, that's peak humor for a 17-year-old. Of course, their parents have to be at the same restaurant when this is going on, so Raven is pretty upset about it. They have this whole dance sequence where they say, "Oppa!" and get up and dance, which I'm not sure of a lot of restaurants doing, but could be wrong. I'm not saying that was true. And so Raven has to, like, cover herself and dance. They always have this in every episode of That's So Raven, where Raven just has to disguise herself, hide, or, you know, something of the sort. And it's hilarious every time. Her parents, of course, give... Oh, she has a vision where Chelsea gets a call from the mom, and so Raven's like, hey, don't answer the phone if my mom calls. Oh well, too late. She calls like right then, and that's when Raven is discovered. She admits to her parents she does not even want to be on this date, and it's like all embarrassing for her. And they're like, well, to learn your lesson, I guess you're gonna have to go home with him. And it's like, whoa! I mean, I get it. Like, it's because he's gross and she doesn't want to be in his car. But obviously, I don't know if that's how parents would react to that situation. Maybe on Hannah Montana they would, actually. It's so funny, too, because there's so many interactions between the parents and her date that only make him look worse. This is definitely one of the worst dates she's been on this season. Like, having finished it, I'm like, that is unbearable. In the B plot, we actually have Cory trying to hit on Chelsea this whole time, and Eddie, like, essentially keeping them apart. Cory keeps trying to demasculate Eddie just so he could get more time with Chelsea, which is actually kind of funny. He ends up making the vacuum explode on him, and Eddie has to dress in kids' clothes, which is really, really funny. In the end, Eddie does get his revenge by spraying whipped cream on him, and there's a part of me that thinks that this was not told to Cory's actor. Like, I really feel like this was like a genuine blooper that they managed to work into the plot, which I love when they do that. So yeah, driven into insanity, definitely a fun episode. I feel like it's more on the repetitive side because it's just everything the other episodes have been doing. But hey, if it's working, you know? And yeah, just the shock of the boy not being all he's cracked up to be, that is definitely a fun lesson I don't think the episode focuses on enough. Just because somebody's older than you doesn't mean they're just as mature as you, especially guys, you know? Like, they are just, let's just say they're a little bit late on the maturity thing. When I was 20, I was like 15. And then we got A Dog by Any Other Name. And for me, this is like the weakest episode, 14, because it's about Raven and Chelsea needing to get boyfriends in order to go to this event. And this is like the second or third episode about her trying to get a boyfriend, and it's starting to get a little bit too much. But it actually starts to focus on Chelsea a little bit more. It's more about trying to get her with a guy. And Raven thinks she sees a vision with her liking this guy named Sammy. And it's like, oh, perfect. We just have to find a guy named Sammy that's going to date you. And then poof, we learn that Sammy's the name of her dog. So apparently that was not a vision about her and a boyfriend, but the dog. And of course, Chelsea gets kind of like tripped up by this and really wants a boyfriend. Meanwhile, Raven has a crush on this guy, but will not tell him and just assumes they're dating. I guess because she has like a vision about it. So she just keeps talking as if she's his boyfriend. And then at the same time has never met him. And Eddie and Chelsea keep reminding her that. That's funny. But the borderline stalking thing on Raven's part of just like liking this guy, pursuing him even though he doesn't know who she is, that's like a very like male storyline, I feel like, but it would come across more harassing if it was a male. This is an interesting conversation about fate and like what is inevitably meant to happen versus what you like forced to happen, and I like that Chelsea gets that plot line. It definitely does well for her. I feel like the main draw for the comedy in this episode is the fact that Chelsea's dog and the guy she has a crush on have the same name, and she's like, oh, I either need to rename the dog or rename the boy. And I'm like, I don't know if you need to do either of that. Like, you definitely just need to not date him, you know? But of course, Raven doesn't want that. She wants them both to be in relationships, which I guess is a priority for teenagers. So then Raven needs to, I don't know, meet her boyfriend, and he's on the basketball team. So her and Chelsea dress up as dudes, go onto the basketball team, and surprise, they're supposed to take off their shirts. It's shirts and skins, and this is like the she's the man moment of the 2000s, where they always thought it was funny for girls to disguise themselves as guys, but then be put in a position where they're like, clearly, no, they're not guys, and yeah, I don't know. This was a weird trope we did, but obviously Raven makes it funny. I just don't think this would be done on TV anymore, you know? Let alone a Disney show. Eddie has his first, like, full-on rap in this episode, and he's pretty fire. You know, these boys are bullying him, and he gets out of it with a really fine, what do we call it? Bar. So instead of actually getting back with the guy because she's upset that she can't get a boyfriend, I like that they don't have her get a boyfriend and that be the solution. Raven just ends up going to the guy that it doesn't work out with and say, like, he, like, missed out on a really good girl, and that's kind of the end of the episode. So there is, like, kind of a win. Just the fact that, like, it seems to be more about the dog is the thing that, like, draws me away from the plot, because it's really just, like, a section of it. So, like, the title of this episode doesn't make me think of this plot super well, you know? Then we get an episode called Saturday Afternoon Fever, and this is another Raven and Mom episode, which is cool, because, like, their dynamic seems to be a little more of the same, where it's just Raven not wanting to be embarrassed by her mother, and in this episode, basically, they're gonna go to a movie with the whole family, and Raven says she has to do something school-wise, but instead, she doesn't. She goes on a date, and it's just her wanting to go on dates this whole season, which, it's fine, I don't care, but I'd like to switch it up, you know? So Raven's vision in this episode is that her mom is sick, so she's not really worried about going to the movies because they're probably not going to go anyway. Raven asks Eddie to hook her up with this kid, Ricky, whatever. Does the names even matter anymore? And so they're going out to the movies, and it becomes this Raven trying to both be in one movie with her mom at the same time and with this guy and Eddie. And of course she, like, makes a huge embarrassment out of herself. Like, at first, it's actually working. I'm like, maybe she could get away with this. And then it's obvious that, like, the movies, she's missing both of the movies, and it's very Sunny with a Chance. Sunny with a Chance did this where she was trying to get together Nico and Grady, so she went to 2 movies with them and jumped between both, trying to get them to talk to each other. And that's kind of what happens here. I guess this is just the origin episode of that story. So yeah, when Raven's at the movies, we learn that the mom is not actually sick. Like, why is she there? And of course, that's where this back and forth comes into play. She's even interrupted at one point to work behind the popcorn stand, and you could tell the Disney execs were just like, just give Raven a reason to freak out and do something crazy again. And she does. She makes the butter overflow and ends up holding up an entire line at the movie theater, which is kind of crazy because it's like, you don't work there. This is not your responsibility, Raven. You could have just walked away from this. She's so lucky to get away with this too, because when the family sees her there, of course, like, she's caught red-handed, and she's just like, oh no, I read the note Mom left, and of course, it's all forgiven. So after all the hijinks, she sits down with the movie and her mom and really misses her. Eddie ends up giving her, like, a little speech about, like, why she should respect her mother, which I don't know if any teenager would do that, but okay. And Raven actually starts to feel bad and realizes that, like, maybe she didn't want to miss this whole movie, and is very thoughtfully opening up to her mom and being like, we need to spend time together. And I'm like, Raven, it's too late. I mean, you're a teenager. It's a Saturday. Like, do you have to go out with your parents? I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, the vision makes sense because her mom's not actually sick. She's just crying from the movie she sees. And this is where I get confused, because the visions should be from Raven's perspective, but sometimes she's in the vision. And this is one of the times where it is from her perspective because it's the profile of the mom's head. So why isn't it consistent? And it also bothers me because she could see visions of things that she's not even in the room for. So she's a psychic, but, like, she could also, like, I don't even know what that means. Chat? No, just kidding. By the end, she learns the time with her mother is precious, and she actually gives up the date to hang out with her mom for the rest of the day. Sweet ending, great. Would never happen on Hannah Montana, though. Then we get season 1, episode 16, a fight at the opera, which... I knew there was musical episodes, I knew there was episodes with people singing in it, but did I know that they were going to make opera references? No, operas are crazy boring. Like, I'm a big fan of musical theater. Do not get me wrong. You could literally see that I'm working on a musical right now called The Consequences of Victoria Gray, about, like, this girl that was born without emotion and forced to be this public executionist. And since she has no emotion, everything she does is kind of easy for her until she, like, gets her emotions back. The point of the story is I'm not against operas. I think it's great to have but operas specifically are always 3 hours long, the singing does not stop, and the rules just seem so counterintuitive to the audience, making it like a hard medium to get really excited about. Maybe we should change it up. So the teacher is super into opera, and Raven and Chelsea work together on a project. This is really a best friends episode, and both of them have their own idea about how to tackle the project. One, they agree that they want to do an opera, because obviously they'll get the teacher's good side. And then Raven has a vision that this is going to actually go really well, but they don't know how yet. Raven wants to make this about shopping, this opera they're creating, and Chelsea wants to make it about the environment. And Raven's is ridiculously capitalist, and Chelsea's is ridiculously too environmentalist. So I don't see why either would show a good opera. And also, when did you have to perform an opera in front of a bunch of people in order to get a grade? Like, I can't believe they had a whole night devoted to this. Meanwhile, in the B-plot, which, by the way, I've been dodging B-plots because sometimes they're just not in the episode, but this one's funny. Cory actually pits his mom and dad against each other, being like, which one could cook better? And then gets, like, free treats for, like, the rest of the year. Until they realize what he's up to, and they're like, you're just trying to get us to cook you food, and it's all part of this, like, cookbook he wants to make, and it really is just manipulating them. And then in the end, they catch up on it, and that's not really a lot of consequences. Like, that's not a big deal. But Raven and Chelsea full-on break up because of this situation. I never realized a school project you had to take seriously would be that intense, but I guess it is. Eddie ends up bringing them back together by showing them some home videos, but alas, it does not work. They do not come to an agreement. They still can't get back together, and I'm kind of sad at this point because I like them as friends. They end up doing the performance with both of them being scheduled to go on at the same time, thanks to Eddie. Eddie's actually a real hero in this episode. Not like Oliver from Hannah Montana. He is a bad person. And not even just the actor playing him. Like, the character that they've written is not a great person. And they basically make fun of themselves all on stage and realize how much they need each other and want to be in each other's lives, and why would they give it up for a project, which I agree. I'm just happy it's not another dating episode. So that's A Fight at the Opera, and the girls end up winning. Congrats. Then we have the episode Psychics Wanted, Season 1, Episode 17, and this one really excited me. Unlike the first one where Raven found out that there's a bunch of other people in the school that also have psychic abilities, this one is also about psychic abilities, building on the lore. So there's this scam company, essentially, that has a TV show, and they take in calls, and it's a fortune teller saying exactly how their future will go. That's just a little bit of context. The episode's really about Raven wanting money, and her parents are not going to give it to her because obviously, she only uses it for shopping. That's all she cares about. Another teen stereotype. And she has a crush on this little jazz musician at the school, which seems like irrelevant, but that'll come up later. So in order to get this money, she follows the ad to Psychics Wanted and sees this TV show being produced. And she kind of admits to the business guy, hey, like, I'm a psychic too. And he's like, well, aren't we all? And they learn that it is just a scam, essentially. Like, nobody there is psychic. So Raven didn't technically reveal her information. And then we get to the same conversation of there's not a lot of consequences to Raven when she admits that she's psychic. Like, I feel like people don't really make her life not normal. Like, it never really seems to be that huge of a deal. Like, even in this, like, they just kind of throw it out, and she's just like, yeah, I'm a psychic. So I wasn't expecting that at all. But yeah, so she ends up being on the phone lines, and she just says to people, like, I had a vision last night, and learns, like, the scam of it all. Then Eddie and Chelsea even get roped into this. They want money, too, and all three of them become, like, pretty good at it. Eventually, the fortune teller that's, like, the head of this wants a raise, doesn't get it, so they ask Raven to step up and be the fortune teller, which is kind of crazy because they don't realize technically that makes it not a scam anymore. So Raven gets a call from the jazz kid at school, and he's like, oh, how do I get in to my college? And she's like, I have a vision. You have to ask out Raven Baxter. And he's like, oh, okay. He shows up to Raven's house and has a girlfriend already. Oh my gosh. I can't believe Raven didn't even fact check that. So that's the issue with Raven having a crush on all these guys, wanting to go out with them, and then finding out later that they had a boyfriend. It's hard because I get it, you know? Like, you're a passionate person. You love somebody. But love at first sight is not real. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, so they show up. Raven's super disappointed, and I kind of feel bad for him because she manipulated him. He ends up calling again the next day. Turns out he didn't get in, so Raven's vision was wrong. What? And it's like, how did she have a vision that this guy did or did not get into the college he wanted? Like, she was not there to physically see it, so why would it be in the vision? I don't know. Anyway, in the end, she exposes this whole thing as a scam on live television when the other fortune teller comes back. And it's kind of sweet because Raven and the fortune teller end up bonding, and even though it's not, like, technically real, it's still sweet to see her get along with an adult, I guess. That's when we get Season 1, Episode 18, If I Only Had a Job. And this is a parody from Wizard of Oz, If I Only Had a Brain, because the Scarecrow... Is that the Scarecrow? Yeah? No. But yeah, it's basically Raven's trying out for the Wizard of Oz, and the episode's not really about that. She's trying out for the Wizard of Oz. She really wants to be Dorothy. She loves to sing, which every Disney Channel star does. But then she has a vision that her dad, Victor, lost his job. And then she decides to basically not worry about the theater thing as much and goes to the job to talk the boss out of firing Victor. And little did she know that's the exact reason why he got fired, because she came and interrupted their work. Victor doesn't seem too, like, burned off about it, but Raven's like, no, it's a job. He has to have a job. We're capitalist society. No, I don't care that much. So she feels horrible for her dad and realizes, like, there has to be a way she can get his job back. Meanwhile, she notices that the guy who is his boss is actually a really big jerk. Definitely borderline racist. He just doesn't treat them the same. So Raven kind of uses this to her advantage, and she dresses up like a celebrity and comes to say, like, she's gonna eat here, but only if Victor's still there. And then when he says, no, Victor's fired, she freaks out and, like, has this whole deal, and it's like, nobody's gonna ever come here again. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of funny. But then everybody expects her to sing. And this is where, like, the whole musical theater thing comes into hand, because obviously she just tried for The Wizard of Oz, and now she has to sing something. Eddie only knows how to play When the Saints Come Marching In, so that's the song they sing to the whole restaurant, and it's, like, such a random song to get up and dance to. But of course, nothing can go perfectly. We have no normal episode if Raven's not putting on a wig and embarrassing herself. That's when the theater teacher shows up, the woman who didn't give her the part. So now she's about to be exposed, until she ends up ruining it on her own. Like, I think it's pretty obvious to the manager that she just broke in, tried to get Victor's job back. And, yeah, Victor finds out and actually tells her it's a good thing, that maybe, like, bad things only happen because the universe is, like, making it so that better things can come along. And I think that's a really good plot. I love how stable Victor is this whole time. He, like, never is worried he lost his job and still continuously, like, you know, promotes positivity. My favorite part of the episode, though, is Cory impersonating a celebrity. Like, I, for a second, thought that he was the actual voice of this female celebrity, but he's just a young kid and his voice is really high, so he got away with it. But, like, just imagine the dad, like, walking in on that phone call. Like, I'd be like, why are you talking about me to my boss in a voice like that? Next is Season 1, Episode 19, The Escape Clause. And this is a Christmas episode, if the title wasn't enough. And it's, like, actually a pretty good episode. I feel like it's the perfect thing to watch during Christmas time. I feel like I would be nostalgic for an episode like this. Because, of course, like, everything is Christmas themed. Like, they go to the mall, they do all the stereotypical, like, the trees set up. Like, Disney Channel really went all out on Christmas. So Raven basically finds out what she's gonna get for Christmas before she gets it, and she's like, whoa, a necklace like that, that's awesome, I want to get that. So she opens the gift, starts wearing it around school, and lo and behold, something happens because of it? It's like these sitcom kids never learn. It's almost like they're actors. Oh my god. Write this down. No, I'm just kidding. So Chelsea and Eddie do not help. They essentially end up throwing the necklace out the window, and Raven is like, wow, I'm screwed. They're gonna find out that I had the vision and used this. It's funny, though, because the parents actually acknowledge that she could have had this vision. They were like, did you have a vision? And it's still curious to me how in or out of the loop they are with how much they know about Raven. They don't seem to talk about it a lot for parents with a psychic daughter. I feel like if I had a psychic daughter, I'd be worried all the time. But, like, they really don't account for it having anything to do with her life. Like, they don't get involved in it. It seems like they're, like, kind of steering clear of it. I only know this because of Hannah Montana. Like, her popularity life kind of, leaks into everybody else's existence. Same thing with, like, Robbie Ray and Jackson. Like, they all have commentary on, like, how she goes about things because they could be affected by it too. But here it's just like these parents just don't care, I guess. So they end up getting to the mall, skipping school. Oh my gosh, never seen that happen. I always wonder, like, did people really skip school that much and that's why they're writing about it? I don't know. So they end up seeing the Santa Claus at the mall, and it turns out to be their teacher, which is cool because they kind of talk about it earlier in the episode. They're like, that's our teacher. Like, he is the midterm exterminator, and he's, like, intense. And I'm like, why does that have to do with anything? And this is where it comes up. Because obviously if the teacher's there at the mall, he's gonna bust them. But it doesn't really happen that way. They get a picture taken with the Santa Claus, and the kids are like, uh-oh. And then Raven has a vision being like, oh, that picture is exactly what's gonna get me caught in this situation. So they end up going with their parents to the mall and trying to avoid them seeing that picture. And it's so funny because, like, I thought the episode would have ended here, but of course now she needs to keep going on with the charade and still inevitably get away with this. And of course they find some way to put Raven in a wig again. To distract them from seeing the picture, she dresses up as the mall Santa and starts making a lot of crazy stuff happen. I'm not saying it's not funny. I'm just saying it's every episode at this point. And then Santa's like, "You're psychic." And she's like, "Teacher, how did you know I was a psychic?" And then they're like, "I'm actually Santa." And I guess that kind of makes sense. Like, he must actually be Santa because nobody else knows that information about her. I don't know. I also don't know why they have to do that in kids shows. Like, why do they have to prove Santa's real? It feels random. And then by the end of the episode, they have Raven just sing Silent Night for 3 minutes. And that's where you could tell they're really starting to try to bring in this pop star persona for all the Disney actresses. Because it's like, why would you just out of context just sing for 3 minutes straight? I mean, I guess it's a Christmas episode, sure. But like, Silent Night? Like, what a boring song for 3 minutes. And it's not even like summarizing the events of the episode. It's not really going into anything at all. It's just her singing Silent Night. Another time where I'm like, Hannah Montana made sense to do something like that, but like, why does this have to happen? Of course, it reminds me of the Wizards of Waverly Place thing where Shakira was on it and Alex and her sang for like 3 minutes also, and I'm like, guys, we get it, you want them to be singers. I know you want them to be singers, but they're people. So season 1 episode 20 of That's So Raven is separation anxiety. And this one is really fun because it's a very real scenario. It's about her parents pretty much divorcing. So Eddie is going to stay over the weekend at Raven's place, and oh my gosh, I have so much nostalgia for those sleepovers. Ugh, do you guys remember we used to all sleep over Raven's house? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, like, I had a lot of sleepovers with my friends. It was fun, okay? It was fun. But he's gonna have to deal with Cory. He has to sleep in Cory's room, or they have a lot going on with them. And Cory is a pet rat, which is really gross, and of course Eddie is a little freaked out the whole time. I would be scared too if I had to live there. We also learned that Eddie's parents are their dentists, so that's why it's like normal that this is happening. I thought it was weird that like it's a guy and a girl like sleeping in the same roof, but they're all friends and it's a family, so I guess we're moving on. So Raven has a vision that her dad is like, we're gonna have to separate. And obviously, as you know, these visions are not always the best encyclopedia. It's kind of like Wikipedia, you know, like how people can change stuff. That's how Raven's visions work. So she confides in Eddie, and then they confide in Chelsea because Chelsea's parents are therapists. And she's like, oh, we just need them to like get together and talk to each other. Meanwhile, they're arguing. The mom and dad are arguing because the dad didn't wear his ring while he's like doing all his cooking, which for me feels fair. I feel like it's a health issue. And yeah, so Victor is like really defensive about it, and the mom is really intrusive about it. Pretty much confirming all of Raven's fears, so it seems like it is going to actually happen. So then she learns that maybe her parents will get together if she was injured and they could bring her back to health, which I think is a crazy, crazy stretch. But then she gets in a full body cast. And this is insane. Of course, they have to put Raven in the most like dangerous scenario dealing with all this stuff, and Eddie and Chelsea are just not that helpful until the entire cast breaks and Raven is pretty much at a standstill. They have an open and honest conversation about divorce, and like Eddie like gives insight saying like it's sad that his parents aren't together, which is really real. I like that this all stems from a genuine place. So of course we have to have this big extravagant event going on. Raven, Eddie, and Chelsea put on a giant performance in the living room, which how in the world did they have a budget for this whole experience? And they start talking about like why people shouldn't get divorced and how to make up and communicate, which is funny. And then seeing Cory also in a cowboy outfit is hilarious. Raven ends up seeing her dad say we have to separate, and it turns out it's because they're both looking for the ring still. Yeah, the ring that he said he wasn't wearing earlier. He's still looking for it, so that's where all of this comes from. They're not actually going to get divorced, and they can have a talk with Raven being like, it's normal for people to like argue every now and then, and it's a very sweet episode. We get everything that makes That So Raven hilarious. Giant wig, a body cast, and just so much more. So separation anxiety, good episode. Well, Season 1, Episode 21 is the season finale of That's So Raven. It's called To See or Not To See. And this one's really funny because I feel like we get the most visions we ever got in an episode all within this one. And we learn a little bit more about Raven's powers and who has them. The B-plot is really kind of pointless at first. It's about Raven's grandmother coming to visit, and it's funny because you think it's going to be like a bigger role, but she's just basically teasing Cory the whole time. She keeps pranking him and getting away with it. Cory keeps trying to like turn on her, but somehow he could never get her back. The episode focuses a lot more on Raven, Chelsea, and Eddie and their friendships, and in relation to her powers. So it starts with them climbing up a rock wall, and it's this really cinematic experience, which it doesn't have to be, and everybody gets embarrassed, and I'm jealous because obviously I wish I could do rock climbing at my school. Like, how do you install something like that and then make it a gym class requirement? But yeah, apparently Eddie is afraid of heights and becomes the laughingstock of the whole school. Ah, gosh. Meanwhile, we kind of learn about this famous walk through the hallway where it's like when there's all these jocks out in the halls, Raven and Chelsea try not to look like gross because they don't want to ruin their reputation in front of them. And Chelsea just doesn't know how to tell Raven that she smells, which is kind of funny. And then Raven has a vision on both of her friends' accounts, pretty much saying that like Eddie will survive the wall and everybody will respect him, and then Chelsea will get a lot of praise and excitement. So Raven's visions pretty much confirm that everything is gonna be awesome. And this is where things get nuts. All the visions come true, but none of them were what they expected. Like, for example, Chelsea walks through the jock hallway, this time with this new getup, with something that her grandmother helped her put together, and then, of course, she has, like, the toilet seat stuck to her butt, which is so embarrassing. I don't know if that even happens in real high schools, but so it turns out Raven's vision was wrong about that, and Eddie also doesn't end up climbing the rock wall. He has this funny poster, though, that he keeps giving to people, which he photoshops his head on top of a bodybuilder, and it's so funny because it's, like, so fake, clearly. And then, so yeah, they get mad at Raven, and are like, wow, your visions are really messing with us. So Raven decides, okay, I'm not going to tell them my visions anymore. And then next thing you know, we get a bunch of sequences where Chelsea's going to audition for the choir, and Eddie is playing an instrument in band class, which I didn't realize they were in band class. And Raven specifically doesn't tell them the visions, and it's so funny because clearly it's about to go wrong, and she doesn't want to warn them this time. And it's interesting because we don't get to see her visions, we just get to see her make that face and then look away. So I guess that means like the camera person is from Raven's perspective, but then also from the friend's perspective. I don't know, I'm a little confused still, but I like that we get to see what Raven's like without seeing the vision. In the end, it's clear that like there's no right or wrong way to do something. She confides within her grandmother and is like, you wouldn't understand how I feel, because obviously visions are the reason that all of this is going on, and you learn that like she's not so different from a normal teenager, that it's like normal to be scared of losing your friends or like promising them something that just doesn't come true, and no real friend would break up with you because of something like that. And this is where the biggest plot twist comes on. Raven realizes that her grandmother is actually psychic, so I guess it's inherited? Or skips a generation. I don't know, that's interesting though. It's really cool that we know that somebody else is a psychic, especially for Raven, because she realizes that her grandmother knows exactly what she's going through, and she's like more willing to listen. And then we learn that's why she was able to prank Cory so hardcore throughout this whole episode.
Woo, did you work up an appetite?
Yep.
Good, because I whipped you up something a little special. Say hello to your great Uncle Earl.
What do you think of this?
Viv, you look tired. Come sit.
Oh, honey, that's so sweet, but I think I'm gonna sneeze.
But yeah, so That's So Raven definitely gave us a lot of lore in this final episode throughout its show. All these visions we get to see, like, it's such a unique premise for a show that I don't even know how to express how impressed I am by all of this. This was one of the shows I didn't grow up, like, always watching, because I got Disney Channel a little bit later than everybody I know. I used to watch it on ABC, but Raven had some really good setups, and having them overcome all their fears, and all Raven's visions leading to a misinterpretation of some sort, it's just comedy gold. And seeing her have to dress up, or, like, put on wigs, and go through all these scenarios, they're really good at weaving it into the plot pretty naturally. I don't feel like things were just so randomly happening. And Raven Simone is so talented. I can't believe how genuine she takes this role. It just goes to show that, like, Disney Channel really did a good job with meeting halfway with writers and actors, and they really found the magic in That's So Raven. Like, how is it so possible to create such a grounded yet fantastical show at the same time? All I know is I'm excited to see the next season, and thank you guys so much for watching this with me. I'm sure it was a very, very quick video to go over this whole show, but do you guys remember this a lot? The first season, obviously, probably had the least played episodes because later in the series, they did more reruns than that. But what do you guys think? Thank you guys so much for sitting through all this, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to check out my new musical, The Consequences of Victoria Gray. We're trying to release songs one by one through the next couple months, so I would love your support on that. But otherwise, comment any more shows you guys want me to do. I can't wait to jump into some more deep dives with you. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Johnny 2000, and have a great day.